This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Gwilda Wiyaka's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the Science of Magic or endorsed in any manner by Gwilda Wiyaka, Relmar McConnell Media Company, its affiliated networks, stations, or employees. Welcome to the Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, a program dedicated to uncovering the unified nature of reality and humanity's ever-evolving place as truly galactic beings. For more information on the Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, visit us online at www.thescienceofmagic.net.
Welcome to the Science of Magic, a place where science and magic come together to transform fact into evolving truth. We're coming to you through the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net, and can also be found on our website, www.thescienceofmagic.net. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. This hour we'll be exploring clear and present. How we translate the events of our lives is subject to our emotions about them. Not overly problematic, but for the fact that current events tend to trigger past, unprocessed feelings. It's hard to live a joyful and productive life when trauma and negative emotions from the past is continually projected onto the present, making a rerun out of the future. We may have engaged in psychological counseling and talk therapy, tried psychotropic drugs to treat brain chemistry imbalance, and engaged in positive affirmations, yet negative feelings and memories from the past persist, coming back at the worst times to interfere with our current life. Why? The aforementioned treatments focus on the brain and thought process, while the emotions and memories that remain are stored in the spiritual or quantum level and lodged in the physical body at the cellular level. While correcting thought process and brain chemistry is an important part of the equation, we must treat the whole enchilada, physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual, to effect complete and lasting change. It's almost impossible to discern clear and present danger from stored trauma and emotions as long as we're unprocessed. This is the basis behind post-traumatic stress disorder. When a circumstance arises in the present life that's in some way similar to a past event which has resulted in trauma, we're triggered into the past event. When this occurs, we drop into the frequency of the past at the energetic, spiritual, or quantum level. Frequency dictates reality. We recreate the past by expressing its frequency. My cousin came home on leave from the front lines in Vietnam for Christmas. He and I had been very close before he was drafted. I was visiting his parents, my aunt and uncle, for Christmas. Christmas Eve, he was sitting on the floor in front of the fireplace. I'd offered to refill his drink and approached him from behind, touching his shoulder to get his attention so he would take the glass. Suddenly, I was on my back on the floor with his enormous paw wrapped around my throat, strangling the life out of me. Looking into his eyes, I could tell he did not see me, but the enemy in his grasp. Having come from an abusive past myself, it took all my focus to see my cousin and not a perpetrator. Drawing on shamanic training and digging deep, I was able to stay present enough to access my love for him beyond my triggered fear. I lay very still as my vision began to tunnel. Reaching up, I gently laid my hand on his cheek, and though I could not speak, I sent him all the love I could manage. His eyes cleared and filled with horror. "Oh my God, Gwilda, I could have killed you," he exclaimed. I have no doubt if I'd let my fear take over and fought him, he would have done just that. Love and fear have totally different frequencies, resulting in a totally different outcome. As long as we're impacted physically and spiritually with negative emotions and traumatic memory, it's very difficult to be present enough to create the future we want to live. The ancient practice of shamanism employs a spiritual healing modality known to many as soul retrieval that, once integrated, can free the client of old patterning on all 4 levels: physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. However, as I've mentioned before, though the form is being revived, we still don't exactly have a competent, well-trained shaman on every corner. Fortunately, many of our modern modalities are stretching to meet these needs. Our guest this hour, Dr. Deb Sandella, author of Goodbye Hurt and Pain, 7 Simple Steps to Health, Love, and Success, is an award-winning psychotherapist, university professor, and originator of the RIM, Regenerating Images in Memory method. Audiences love how she playfully and powerfully interacts with them to bring her messages alive. Dr. Deb has been acknowledged with professional awards such as Outstanding Clinical Specialist, Research Professional, and Research Excellent, and EVVY Best Personal Growth Both Award. Research finds her work significantly decreases symptoms of stress-related illness and increases quality of life. After this commercial break, I'll introduce Deborah, and we'll share thoughts on how dissolving negative emotions and traumatic memory at the cellular level can free your joy and creativity. Now that could be useful, so don't go away. You're listening to The Science of Magic. Prior innovative episodes can always be found on our website, www.thescienceofmagic.net.
This is Kevin Randall. For nearly 30 years, I have been investigating the case of the Roswell UFO. I have interviewed hundreds of people and stood on the crash site. Now in Roswell in the 21st century, I have reviewed dozens of hours of audio and videotaped interviews, examined hundreds of files that relate to the crash, and have returned to Roswell in an attempt to put all that information into the proper perspective. For the first time in Roswell in the 21st century, I have made a dispassionate reevaluation of all that material and provide a new look at what happened. This is a book that clears away all the clutter that has hidden the truth for so long, strips away the various lies that surround the case, exposes the Air Force attempts at cover-up, and found a core of solid information that tells us all where the case stands today. Roswell in the 21st century will be available in just a few weeks. For more information, please visit my website at www.kevinrandall.blogspot.com.
Gibbs A. Williams, Ph.D., is a practicing psychoanalyst, supervisor, researcher, and author in New York City. Much of his life has been dedicated to understanding nature and the uses of meaningful coincidences or synchronicities. His radical and original non-Jungian, non-mystical, non-magical theory of synchronicities illuminates much of the fog surrounding this challenging and perplexing topic. His ideas and manners are fresh, presented in a style that is both entertaining and highly informative. He is also an expert on crisis intervention, specially focused on violence reduction for the police and citizens, mastering anxiety, frustration, and stress without the use of medication, and effectively preventing and treating heroin addiction. Dr. Williams can be contacted at his email address at gwwilliamsny11@aol.com or visit his website at www.drgibbswilliams.com.
Shamanism is recognized as a method to access the quantum level. Mastery of shamanic skills puts spiritual information and healing power into your hands. Path Home Shamanic Art School, a bonded Colorado certified occupational school, has met rigorous state standards, ensuring its director and instructors have the qualifications to teach the shamanic arts. Path Home offers its certification program in blocks of study. Block 1, a 5-day intensive, will be held in the beautiful mountain town of Coaldale, Colorado, October 13th through 18th. Registration deadline is September 12th. Experience journey trance, power animals, helping spirits, sacred space, and life purpose. Come discover your power. Join me, Gwilda Wiyaka, in the magical world of shamanism. Call 303-775-3431 or visit findyourpathhome.com. Welcome back. This is the Science of Magic, dedicated to unification and evolution of consciousness. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. Our guest this hour, Dr. Deb Sandella, is an award-winning psychotherapist, university professor, and author of Goodbye Hurt and Pain. Her website is www.riminstitute.com. Deborah, thank you for joining us on the Science of Magic.
Oh, thank you, Gwilda, for having me.
This should be an exciting time. I think we have a lot in common here.
Yes, I agree.
We tend to associate thoughts and memories with the brain. Are they totally contained there?
Well, I'm not sure exactly the nature of your question. I would say that thoughts register through the mind and can become beliefs that then settle into the unconscious that we may be aware of or we may not be aware of. I think memories, on the other hand, really imprint in emotional and factual memory in the neurosystem of the body. So does that answer your question then?
Yes, it does. It does. So when we process traumatic memories mentally, why do they often persist?
Right. Well, when we are working at the intellectual mind level, what happens is the left brain just doesn't do feelings because the left brain is all about measurement and logic and linear process, and we know that's not how feelings work, which is why we get frustrated with them because we can't just control them like we would like to. And so what happens is they now are just being talked about. So when feelings are talked about, we're not accessing the true feelings. So feelings happen and live in the right brain, the right creative brain. And we have to access that through the body or imagination or primary ways that I use so that we can really get at the neurological imprint in emotional memory.
So emotions are often seen as coming from the heart even, yet everyone's probably experienced betrayal as a punch in the gut or grief as stopping in the lungs or tears caught in the throat. Would you explain this for us?
Sure, right. Emotion actually does happen in the body first, and the heart has great deal of receptors to sense what is happening in the environment and what is being experienced. So then that information just is transmitted to the mind for words and interpretation and meaning. Now, when the mind starts to interpret it, sometimes, it makes a story that's true, and sometimes it's not always true. But it will give it a story. It will give it words. It will give it meaning. And so it's always interesting to see what the meaning is that arrives first. It doesn't always mean that's the truth of it. The truth is really stored in the body that we can access through the right brain, through the creative brain.
So when we have a backlog of unprocessed feelings, do we tend to shut down on all of our emotions? And how can we reverse this process without becoming overwhelmed?
So what happens, I would say, is we start to not really understand and remember who we are because our feelings are meant to be a constant input of transient states of awareness that give us information about what's going on inside us and also how we're reacting to what's going on around us. So it's a bit like an emotional compass, feelings are. And so when we try to stop them or we block them or they get stuck because we're, shocked. We're shocked by a trauma, then we're no longer gaining information that is useful to us. So now we're stuck in that block. So it's like when you think about it, if the block is like a brick wall, that when there's a brick wall there, it's very hard to see through to the future, to the next step, to who we really are. It just really stops our awareness of so many things that it can feel quite overwhelming, I would say.
So are you talking like identifying with our feelings in at any given time, like our languaging? I am hurt. I am sad. I am. When we tend to lead with I am, that means rather than letting our feelings move, we're identifying with them. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes. I mean, that's part of it, that we, in our culture, what you just spoke is exactly right. That's how we tend to informally speak about feelings. Like, I am angry, I am anger, is the implication. And I think that's the basic fear that people have about uncomfortable feelings, is that we become them. However, we don't. They're actually, the way I like to think about it is it's like the river of emotion that is flowing in and flowing through us. And it brings us information as it flows through. As long as we don't interrupt it, it just continues to flow into evaporation or on down into another place in the river. Now, if we try to resist feelings, if we don't like them, we think they're bad, we judge ourselves, we try to stuff them either consciously or unconsciously, it's like creating a dam in the river. And so what happens when you create a dam in the river, the water that is being held by the dam just stays put. So what happens, the feelings we're trying to avoid or get rid of actually stick around. And that's when they go underground and become invisible in our body, in our unconscious, without us knowing it. However, they're still there.
Daydreaming is an interesting thing, and I see that you talk about daydreaming a little bit. You know, we all tend to do it, but there's little understanding of its true purpose. How much of what we daydream is actually helping us process memories and emotions, and how can we get this to better work for us?
Right. Well, it's really interesting, and the new word for daydreaming is mind wandering, because there actually is now starting to be a bit of research about the value of mind dreaming, because I think in our work ethic culture we've tended to think of it as wasted time or avoidance, when actually it has a great value, because we're turning off the limitedness of the left brain logic just enough to allow a creative new association of different things in our mind and our memory to come together in a creative way. And so, for instance, in some of the research, they found that when people were given a task to create, I can't remember now if it was was a creative, like awareness of names that you could refer to this process. And so when they were given time to mind wander, their performance in this creative endeavor increased by 30%. And the people who stayed focused and very intent on the detail, because they were given an assignment to do a very detailed, logical process, their performance on that challenge stayed the same. So what happens is whenever we're looking for creative problem solving, when we're looking for expression of our creative gifts, then mind wandering actually becomes very important to allow and even encourage.
So what's the difference between daydreaming and the imagination? You know, most of us have been taught to view the imagination as fanciful or invalid. What is it really, and how do they relate?
Well, I make a distinction, I think Carl Jung did too, between fantasy and imagination or creative mind wandering. And so fantasy can be used to avoid reality, like really trying to avoid reality. I actually have worked with people who have, for instance, particular addictions to particular kinds of thoughts, like sexual addiction, that they will use sexual fantasy at times when they're under stress or they're feeling insecure to avoid kind of facing what the real issue is that's going on. That's very different than allowing our spontaneous creative process of the mind to, because what happens is our unconscious processes, we have actually some really positive unconscious processes that are very helpful to us. So, we really haven't explored that in our culture that much. We tend to think of logic and making sense of things linearly, and then that imagination is a bit like play or it's childlike. And this is really not a correct view of how we operate. We really have great organic ability to problem solve in a creative way that is different than logic, than a linear way. And in fact, I don't know, I'm going on a bit here, but there is some research out of Sydney. Is it good to go ahead and share that now? Or not? That's fine.
I'd like to start the next segment with that, so we have plenty of space for it. So,
Okay.
What role do you think imagination can play in processing feelings? How can we make this work for us?
Right. Well, imagination is so powerful because it taps aspects of ourselves that our left brain, our mind, is unaware of. So with imagination, we can, first of all, figure out, or maybe figure out's the wrong word, that's more of a left brain word, we can become aware, we can have an insight of the source, the original source of a block, of an emotional block. And we can do that by asking for an image, asking for a number from the mind, or by going through the body and beginning to give our body sensation words so that we can follow that trail down to whatever memory is the one that's really stuck. Because if you find the exact correct memory, then it becomes easy. But most of the time we don't really know the exact memory that needs to be unleashed.
We can locate that memory by starting the imagination working? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, by asking imagination to show us.
Though that's like consciously choosing what to imagine, and that's not normally what we do. Is that correct?
No, you're not consciously choosing to. I mean, you are intentionally asking imagination to guide you. So, however, we're not consciously leading the imagery or what imagination reveals.
Okay, so let me see if I got this right. You're setting your intent that you're searching for a lost memory that you need to process, but then you let the imagination go where it will?
Yes, exactly. So that our logical mind will have an idea of what it thinks it is, and most of the time it's wrong. So I keep going into stories. I don't want to go too long here.
Well, that's okay. We're going to have to take a break, so we'll pick up this on the other side. Deborah and I will return to our discussion after this short break. You're listening to The Science of Magic on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. Previous broadcasts of thought-provoking episodes can always be found on our website, www.thescienceofmagic.net. We will be back, so don't you go away.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone radio show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, High Tech with Corey Kay, and every minute of the 24/7, 365 programming of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 712-432-9459, courtesy of TalkStream Live. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 712-432-9459 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember, 712-432-9459 for the best of paranormal, new age, thought-provoking, sci-fi radio programming 24/7, 365.
Wouldn't you love to know the secret to everything? Well then, meet Dr. Kimberly McGeorge and her cutting-edge breakthrough knowledge that combines science with possibility. Dr. Kimberly brings real-life answers and healing to those open to alternative solutions. She teaches solution-based programs and classes that will change all areas of your life forever. Specializing in conscious creation, intuitive readings, and energy medicine, you can rapidly shift health, relationships, business, and money and abundance challenges quickly. Receive her best-selling book, Secret to Everything, at no cost by going to secrettoeverything.com/X-Zone. That's right, transformation can start now. Just go to secrettoeverything.com/X-Zone and receive Dr. Kimberly's book for free.
While science pursues fact, magic accesses the quantum level, bridging random facts to form truth. As long as science and magic remain separate and polarized, the truth cannot be known. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka. Join me on the Science of Magic radio program, dedicated to unification and evolution of consciousness. During each episode, I'll be speaking with experienced and respected scientists and mystics. From astrologers to astronomers, from medical doctors to shaman, the scientific method to dowsing and intuition, we'll weave together information from seemingly divergent practices to promote unity and enlightenment. Join me, Gwilda Wiyaka, and the Science of Magic right here on the Mutual Broadcast Network. For more information, visit www.thescienceofmagic.net.
I am Dr. Carl O'Helvey, founder, president of a new cancer foundation focusing on evidence-based physical, mental, and spiritual interventions, including natural cancer cures, prayer, meditation, affirmations, nutrition, and other related holistic cancer prevention and cure modalities. These are used in cancer education, research, and financing care. I ask for your help to continue this important work by donating at www.holisticcancerfoundation.com.
Welcome back. This is the Science of Magic, a place where magic and science come together to promote enlightenment. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. Our guest this hour is Dr. Deb Sandella, an award-winning psychotherapist, university professor, and author of Goodbye Hurt and Pain. Deborah, you were about to tell us a story.
Right. Thank you. Yes, there was a client who came in who was in her early 30s, wanted to get married and have children, and it just wasn't working. In fact, dating had always kind of been a problem for her. And so when we asked her imagination to bring her an image of the first time she experienced this, she saw her fifth grade cafeteria line. She's standing there, and she didn't remember it. This was not in her conscious awareness at this time. So as she looked out of those fifth grade eyes, she saw a fifth grade boy come up and say to her, "You're ugly." And she suddenly was humiliated. She felt, tears were coming into her eyes, and she never said anything, and the moment just passed. So when we went back then to that memory that had created this whole self-image of not being attractive to men, we looked through those same eyes, her fifth grade eyes again, and this time we created safety so she could actually speak out loud to him. And she said, well, that was mean. You hurt my feelings. And when we saw what he wanted to say, looking through his eyes, she discovered that he said it because he liked her, which is not probably hard to believe about fifth grade boys. So that it totally changed her whole sense of being attractive to men. And so within months, she had met somebody she enjoyed. They were engaged within a year. They're now married with 2 children. So that when you find that exact moment and work with it, you get very, very quick results.
This sounds really shamanic in nature. Are you familiar with the shamanic work?
A little bit, yes. I mean, I have earlier in my life, I have attended some workshops that were shamanic, and I always enjoyed them. And yes, I can totally see the parallel. But go ahead. I'd love to hear how you make that parallel.
Oh, that's okay. This is about you today. So how do you advise on how to relearn to use the imagination? It looks pretty useful.
Oh, absolutely. The good news is we don't have to, it's not hard. It's really easy because it's our organic system. So that the very first thing is to shift over into the right brain, and which in our particular culture isn't a common occurrence because we're pretty much attentive to our visual channel, taking in information with our eyes open, and then analyzing it to make sure things are safe or we're performing well or whatever. And so the very first way, the easiest way I would say to shift over into your right brain is to close your eyes. So when we close our eyes and we start to control and focus on our breathing, breathing is an autonomic function, so it happens automatically. So that gives us access now to the involuntary nervous system, which is where the fear response is. So merely by closing our eyes and start to focusing on our breathing, we can dip into a place where imagination will become available to us.
So do you see traumatic memory and negative emotions as preventing a person from being in the present moment? And would you mind speaking to this?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, the trauma research really shows that when there is a trauma, and again, trauma is based on interpretation. So what really becomes traumatizing for one person may be different than what's traumatizing for another. But whenever there is a trauma that feels severe enough to really stick and not be processed, then it stays in constant repeat. It's kind of like if you had a loop of that memory that unconsciously just keeps repeating, so that no matter what the situation, that the person now continues to re-experience the feelings of that trauma, not the specifics. And, you know, in the new situations, the people, the context will change, but the feelings of being victimized repeat.
You know, I call that taking the events of the past, superimposing them onto the future, onto the present, and making a rerun out of the future.
Right. Well said. Well said.
Can we be totally unaware of projecting old processed traumatic memories and negative emotions onto our current circumstances?
Oh, completely. I would say it's very common. It's very common. And that is why having imagination show us what is the source is so enlightening. So, for instance, in the book, I share lots and lots of real-life stories, and it's just fascinating to find out what shows up for people that they linearly or logically didn't remember, or, it was so long ago, they had really forgotten the moment, those moments.
How do you see the projection of old memories and feelings onto our present affects outcome in our lives?
Well, I would say that there's several things. One is that it really blocks us from seeing our resourcefulness. And so when we're out of touch with our own resourcefulness, our own resilience, then we don't take risks in the same way. So what I've observed with people is that when there's been an unprocessed trauma, like for instance, I've been doing some talks on bullying because of school starting. So many adults, when they have gone back to bullying in school, at a younger time, what happens is through their life, they are much more cautious about getting hurt or feeling like a failure or rejected. And so they just don't take the risk that they would otherwise if that memory had been processed. So as soon as they process it, they can begin to step out more and take more risks. So that's one thing, is that it can really limit our level of success in relationships, work, and it can even show up in health.
Yeah, and it's like, what I've seen and experienced myself is if we're still bogged down with old traumas, we interpret the actions of others in our present based on the old traumas rather than really what's going on. Can you speak to that?
Oh, that is exactly right. So what happens... So what's interesting is because when we start, let's say, with a problem. So the problem is something that is from the left brain. So I know, let's say my relationship isn't working. Or say with the lady that I just talked about, her situation about going back to 5th grade. So she had no idea what was the cause of her not really having a relationship click in and take off, and for her and a potential partner to connect, because she was still projecting the experience of this boy who said you're ugly, and she had interpreted that as being unattractive. She was still projecting that onto all the men around her, that they were still looking at her in that way. So when that changed, she began to interact. Well, first of all, she showed up physically different. So when she walked out of the room, she was holding her body in a very different way, much more as a beautiful woman rather than a frumpy, kind of trying to hide herself way of how she walked in. So then when she interacted with men, there was now the possibility of attraction showing up.
So what you're talking about is how the body carries how we feel about ourselves. Can you explain that?
Right. So the mind-body connection is so interwoven. I don't think we've really understand it all yet. However, what we do know is that in the brain, for instance, that in the brain, the area where physical pain registers is also the same area where emotional pain registers. So there was some research recently where they played with giving people who were experiencing heartache Tylenol. And what they found is it actually relieved their heartache for a period of time because of the way the brain is laid out, where those two areas of pain overlap each other. So it's fascinating because when we look at, there's so many problems with addiction in our culture. And it's like, how much of the addiction is also coming from not processing emotion, I think is a very, very big question.
So let's go back to the heart. That fascinated me a little bit. Do you think that having heartache from an emotional trauma can have the same symptoms as the heart attack?
Well, I would say that I have found in my experience that we do get symptoms in the body that are metaphoric for what we're emotionally experiencing. So that, yes, I would say it's not uncommon for a physical symptom, for the body to actually demonstrate physically. And we're not talking about a psychological problem. We're talking about a real physical problem can, be connected to the emotional problem.
So, 1,000 years ago, Louise Hayes kind of made that correlation. Are you familiar with her work?
Yes, yes, thank you. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so she was able to correlate different physical illnesses with the emotional causality, and you're kind of talking about that, aren't you?
Right, exactly, yes. And, some of it is, so if we think about the language of the right brain, so the left brain is verbal, but the right brain speaks in symbolic language and images, feelings, and body sensations, in symbolic language like metaphors. So what we find are metaphors frequently show up when we're talking about emotion that has become invisible, pains, hurts and pains that have become invisible, that there's a strong metaphoric expression that can happen.
And again, you're overlapping with shamanism. This is really fun because the metaphor is the language of the shamanic culture. Yeah, amazing. So the right brain is the more intuitive side, yes?
Correct, yes. It is intuitive because the left brain, we're so lucky we have both, left and right brain, because they're both important. They both have great value. However, in our culture, we've overestimated the left brain because that's been our evolution. We started without it, and then, without having it well-developed understanding.
We're going to have to take another break, dear. Deborah and I will be back on the flip side of this commercial break. You're listening to The Science of Magic on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net, the place where altruistic professionals of science and the esoteric create common ground for the betterment of our world. You can always listen to previous transformative broadcasts on our website, www.thescienceofmagic.net.
Wouldn't you love to know the secret to everything? Well then, meet Dr. Kimberly McGeorge and her cutting-edge breakthrough knowledge that combines science with possibility. Dr. Kimberly brings real-life answers and healing to those open to alternative solutions. She teaches solution-based programs and classes that will change all areas of your life forever. Specializing in conscious creation, intuitive readings, and energy medicine, you can rapidly shift health, relationships, business, and money and abundance challenges quickly. Receive her best-selling book, Secret to Everything, at no cost by going to secrettoeverything.com/X-Zone. That's right, transformation can start now. Just go to secrettoeverything.com/X-Zone and receive Dr. Kimberly's book for free.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone radio show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, High Tech with Corey Kay, and every minute of the 24/7, 365 programming of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 712-432-9459, courtesy of TalkStream Live. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 712-432-9459 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember, 712-432-9459 for the best of paranormal, new age, thought-provoking, sci-fi radio programming 24/7, 365.
Coming soon to the X-Zone Broadcast Network is A Different Perspective with me, Kevin Randall, as your host. We'll be taking a close look at what is happening in the world of UFOs today with side trips into the paranormal. Guests will range from those who are household names to those who have a different perspective on a variety of topics. No topic will be taboo, but there will be tough questions asked as we all search for the truth about UFOs, the paranormal, and those things that excite us. Sometimes we'll agree with a guest and sometimes we won't, but we'll try to keep the program topical. For those of you who would like to read, be sure to visit www.kevinrandall.blogspot.com and remember to listen to the other fine programs on the X-Zone Broadcast Network at www.xzbn.net. This is Kevin Randall. For nearly 30 years, I have been investigating the case of the Roswell UFO. I have interviewed hundreds of people and stood on the crash site. Now in Roswell in the 21st century, I have reviewed dozens of hours of audio and videotaped interviews, examined hundreds of files that relate to the crash, and have returned to Roswell in an attempt to put all that information into the proper perspective. For the first time in Roswell in the 21st century, I have made a dispassionate reevaluation of all that material and provide a new look at what happened. This is a book that clears away all the clutter that has hidden the truth for so long, strips away the various lies that surround the case, exposes the Air Force attempts at cover-up, and found a core of solid information that tells us all where the case stands today. Roswell in the 21st century will be available in just a few weeks. For more information, please visit my website at www.kevinrandall.blogspot.com.
What Happened in Benghazi is revealed by Nicholas Genix, author of Obama, Islam, and Benghazi. He informs the American people that President Obama deceived them by advocating a strong foreign policy prior to the 2012 presidential election, and Hillary Clinton supported this deception. As the title infers, there is a connection between Obama, Islam, and Benghazi. Ample evidence informs Americans that Obama's early indoctrination in the Quran developed an affinity for Islam, why the Quran is the source of discontent in many countries, and why the Obama foreign policy deception led to poor military action and caused the loss of American lives in Benghazi. Genix provides 36 questions for the Select Committee on Benghazi to validate if Americans are justified to mistrust President Obama and Hillary Clinton. An overview of Obama, Islam, and Benghazi is presented on the website www.futureofgodamen.com. That's www.futureofgodamen.com. Afterlife expert Roberta Grimes was the first one to say that dying can be fun. Now her best-selling book, The Fun of Dying, is available in stores worldwide. So if you wonder whether death ends life, how it feels to die, or what heaven might be like, The Fun of Dying was written for you. And if you have always been afraid of death, or if you worry that your life has no meaning, let The Fun of Dying ease your fears and bring new meaning to your life. Nothing said in The Fun of Dying is based on the teachings of any religion. Instead, Roberta draws on evidence to explain how death happens, how it feels, and what comes next. A lot of the best death-related evidence was produced in the first half of the 20th century. When it is put together with recent discoveries, it tells a consistent and amazing story. Roberta Grimes blogs and answers questions at robertagrimes.com. Her wonderful book, The Fun of Dying, is available on Amazon and at stores worldwide wherever books are sold.
Welcome back. This is The Science of Magic, bringing together gifted people of service to the world. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. Our guest this hour is Dr. Deb Sandella. She's an award-winning psychotherapist, university professor, and author of Goodbye, Hurt and Pain. Deb, let's play a little bit with accessing memory through the physical body.
Right, yes. So the technique that I created, REM, R-I-M, has us to close our eyes, focus on our breathing, and begin to sense in the body whatever's being experienced. Because as we trust our organic system, then the body will reveal through imagination what is there. Would you like to play with that a little bit, or?
No, because I want to. There's a lot. I want to pick your brain on a lot of issues, if you don't mind.
Okay.
So
sure.
Can accessing memory through the physical body be actually dangerous?
Well, not to my knowledge. Did you have something you were specifically thinking of?
Well, it seems like that we have these systems set up for a purpose. In other words, we don't consciously remember things because they were traumatic. Can we push a person beyond their substance by circumventing the brain's blocks and accessing it through the body?
Well, I think we always respect anything that shows up that says don't go forward. Like if the imagination does not bring an image, so like I've done a room process in a group of 200 people for when I've been speaking to Jack Canfield's audiences. And in that group, there will be some people, a small number usually, that don't have anything happen, or they just go to sleep. So what happens is I always respect that. We don't ever want to try and push through whatever is organically presented. So what comes is ready to be worked with, and if there's nothing coming or there's a feeling of going to sleep, it's like, well, then that's what was supposed to happen. So I trust the organic system completely.
So basically, you're saying if a person kind of goes to sleep or goes unconscious, that's their form of avoiding an area that is might be overwhelming at this time?
Yes, maybe they would need individual facilitation to work with that. So what happens is so I teach people to be facilitators to actually apply the REM process. And so I teach them safety measures, because when we're facilitating, then, it's a little different. We can go further, but we have to go further in a very safe way, because we don't ever want to open up something that's not ready to be opened up. We're very respectful of that.
I've in my practice, I've seen times when people are totally unaware that there's anything awry in their history, only to uncover, just like opening up a can of worms. What do you suggest when this starts to happen, when people are seeing, oh my goodness, my whole history is different than I thought?
Right. Well, I think it depends on how the person's feeling. If they're doing this on their own, then, we can bring in virtual resources to be with us that the imagination brings forth, materializes for us through imagination. And what we know is that when we have when we can imagine somebody being with us in a scary experience, it actually changes that experience. So we know from some research that actually works. And it actually works better when it's a picture or an image of that resource rather than having an actual person there, which is kind of interesting.
So the person is actually imagining support?
Correct. Yes. So that we actually, and this is in the book as well, we actually call in through imagination, have the imagination bring forth the virtual resource, whoever it is that shows up to be with us, that is safe and loving and powerful. And of course, you see all kinds of different kind of figures show up depending on that unique person. However, again, it's not an intellectual choosing. We let the imagination choose for us.
So this again sounds like shamanism, like having a helping spirit. Having a helping spirit come surround you. Is that what you're seeing there as well?
Say it again. Having what now?
A helping spirit come support you.
Yes, although it's not always a spirit. It may be a person that's actually in your life right now.
Oh,
and
okay.
So it is the same idea, but we're not limiting it to, let's say, a spirit resource or a spirit guide, that it's whomever it is that shows up. And sometimes it will be like a best friend who's really supportive, or a teacher from high school. I mean, I've seen so many, sometimes it's an animal, like a pet that has passed over, or actually a pet right now that is has such a good relationship with the person.
Got it. When I was in massage college, there was a form of body work taught that accessed emotions stored in the physical body. But after a time, I noticed that while you could push on a spot and the person would weep and wail and gnash their teeth, the next time you access that same point, they'd go through it all over again. So my question to you is, how do we get it out once we've accessed it?
Right. Well, I think the key part there is to allow expression, so that when we access that, it's really important to start to move into the emotion, which is great, and then to start giving the emotion words to express it in present tense, so that we bring a voice to a time when a voice was denied or the person was too scared to speak up. And so we bring safety and a voice to times when that wasn't present. But what we know about memory now through the research is we actually can regenerate. We can unlock a memory by remembering it and recalling it in present time, and then that unlocks it. Then we can recreate the memory in a new positive way that has a voice and has safety.
So what you're talking about here seems to me like, again, using a shamanic method or the imagination to rewrite our history to have a different outcome so that we can neurologically open up to a different outcome. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, it is. The one thing that is, it's much more organic. However, in terms of how it happens or how it works, it's very organic and unfolding in an organic way. But it is rewriting your emotional memory, actually.
So how much does it cost to have this work done?
Well, people can do some of it, like the book, the new book that is out. It tells stories, the neuroscience, and it also, every chapter has practice activities so that people can safely try out some of these things on their own or as a group. You can actually use the book with a book club to go through all of the steps. And if you want to be facilitated, if you'd like to come in, there is a variety of prices depending on the facilitator's expertise. But you can find that. Actually, it will be out very soon. The directory, I'm just transferring to a new website, but there is a directory of RIM facilitators that I've trained that are on the website of riminstitute.com.
Great. So what's the price range?
From about 150 up, I would say the average would be 150 to maybe 250. Now, when I work with people, because I created the method, it's more expensive.
How long is each session?
The sessions can run from 1 to 2 hours when you're really having a session. Now, what happens is, I also do a lot of work with Jack Canfield at his seminars. And when somebody is in an experience where they're pretty open already, I can go in and do 20, 30 minutes and have an amazing breakthrough. That person can just, they're just ready to go there. They're already halfway there, but now we're going to give it words. We're going to give it some specifics, some context, and then make it extremely powerful. But a regular session, I would say, is about 1 to 2 hours.
So your book is full of great self-help exercises and techniques, I couldn't help but notice. But what advice do you have for people who find themselves overwhelmed by the process?
Correct. Now, what did you ask?
What advice
was there
do you
a
have for
question
people
there?
that find? What advice do you have for people once they're going through your book that they might find themselves overwhelmed by the process?
Oh, well, then I would seek some assistance, especially if somebody has a abuse history, that can make it a little harder to do on your own, to go back if that happens. Now, that doesn't always happen. Just because somebody's had an abuse history doesn't mean that is the memory that's needing to be cleared right now. It's not always true. There may be something else that is there that's actually more recent. And so it's always interesting to see. See, that's why we trust the imagination. That I think Socrates called the imagination is the language of the soul.
Beautifully put, beautifully put. Well, this has been so informative, and I can't thank you enough for being on the show with me and bringing this to our listeners. Our guest this hour has been Dr. Deb Sandella, an award-winning psychotherapist, university professor, and author of Goodbye, Hurt and Pain. Her website is www.riminstitute.com. This has been The Science of Magic. Remember, you can always listen to past thought-provoking episodes on our website, www.thescienceofmagic.net, and it's for free. Until next time, dear ones, may you be blessed with knowledge and comforted with love as you set yourself free.
Searching through the na